commitment is a commitment. COVID shut the whole world down.
Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni has decreed an immediate 2-week ban on all vehicle traffic and a night curfew to combat the spread of the novel coronavirus.
What improvements can you make? How do we bridge the gap? We said we would make some disruption. Look at the markets differently, create consortiums, have some targets. Don't go to South Africa or to the US, in these places where we've been, without market research, without tests and preferences, without understanding how people want your product. Where do we want to go? Let's appoint a trade representative.
My name is Odrek Rwabwogo, and the Uganda trade representative.
Market leadership means market responsibility. We work hard to balance this trade. I ask that we be intentional on removing all barriers to. So the honorable ministers who are still here, the government officials who are here, I think I saw Investment Authority, delegation from South Africa, of business people, all our exhibitors who made it today, all our sponsors. Let me start by thanking MTN. If I could have, there are two sisters of mine, they know who I'm talking about. Just stand and we clap for them. I know they have people above them. Cuba and Sylvia. Yes. Thank you so much. A commitment is a commitment. Because this commitment has been on for the last 4 or 5 years, but since last year, there's been a drive and passion and insistence that we fulfill what the President of Uganda asked for, which was that if you invest in a country and you're successful, you should look at other sectors that have not yet made it and bring about corporate influence and ensure that you can do value addition, you can do manufacturing, you can create jobs for young people. All our sponsors, I will really be doing a disservice if I don't talk about you as all the banks that are here, all insurance companies, our brothers from Nile Breweries, SAB Miller, our brothers from DSTV, and really generally the Federation of South African businesses in Uganda. I want to thank you so much for this collective effort, working together to ensure that we can do this return summit. And I'm hoping that we can continue this conversation in a much more structured way and deal with the outcomes of today. Now, we played a video clip there, and really what I want to share with you very quickly is that COVID had something good about it. Sometimes there's something they call the law of unintended consequences. COVID shut the whole world down. It shut our country longest. We had the longest shutdowns. But it taught us to work together. It taught us that not one person, not one institution can do a job. In our country, we had security working with health, health working with tourism, tourism working with immigration. And for me, I have held onto those lessons because we figured out that to recover, we needed to study some gaps. And this is how we arrived at asking MTN and the sponsors to help. Gaps in those 13 sectors that were played on the video. And we thought that if we look at what one can do in those gaps and fill them, we would arrive at USD $6 billion in the next 5 years in terms of exports. We would look at the markets differently, and we would make changes in terms of helping farmers to improve production, but also finding markets in our brother countries. Now, so we took the whole journey. It takes about 8 steps to produce a product from the farm to when a consumer takes it. This can be said of a service or any other in business. So you have a farmer who requires inputs and implements. And that farmer cannot act alone. There you need some changes. You need technology. You need companies that can support that farmer or a group of farmers to ensure that they are able to produce the right quality and standard. Then number two, you have an aggregator. If you are in fruits and vegetables or flowers, there is something they call a pack house. The aggregator has pack houses, and people come and inspect government institutions to ensure that this aggregator has the standard that will be bought by a consumer. Then you have a transporter who is licensed from the aggregator to deliver that product to a shipper. And then at a shipper, you have warehousing. You have institutions of government like SARS and URA to ensure that this shipper fulfills the standard, the bills of lading. Those of you, many of you are in business, you know what I'm talking about. So from a shipper, you have a distributor. From a distributor, you have a salesperson. A salesperson speaks the language of the market, communicates very well. From there, you have a retailer. A retailer measures the shelf space, and shelf space is a point of either profit or loss. And then you have a consumer. These steps, we map to them. We looked at them and say, how do we bridge the gap? And so we decided that we're going to take some of those of you who come from Uganda know a district called Gulu. Gulu is literally the center of Africa. Flat land, good agricultural potential, and opportunities. So we looked at total 572,000 acres, that district alone, with 11 units of government. But of that acreage, 549,000 is arable land and it's not farmed. What is farmed is like 30%. And so we thought, what improvements can you make in terms of getting these lands, create consortiums, map that journey from the farmer up to the consumer, and have some targets. So that's how we arrived at that 6 billion, and eventually how we ended in South Africa in February. So we said we would make some disruption. You know, many of you who are my age know that young people are disruptors. Yeah? The technology of today will be useless by 2030. The consumer of today is not the consumer of 2030. Businesses know that. Huh? Even in politics, the voter of today, 5 years to come, they are different. So we thought, make these interventions first on markets. Get to the markets with your wide open eyes. Stop blind trade. Don't go to South Africa or to the US, in these places where we've been, without market research, without tests and preferences, without understanding how people want your product from the farm eventually to the consumer. And we found when you have a market, it demands a standard. So we got into standards and improving our labs and ensuring that we have laws and regulations that make sure that our food is safe. When you have those two, they demand a particular infrastructure. You have to improve your airports, your aerodromes, your exit points. When you've done those three, you need money to underwrite invoices of exporters. So we're making these changes so that small businesses that we have in Uganda cease to be small. When they meet with you in South Africa or here, they have a conversation of mature people that are able to handle some things. That's our task. That's what we're working on, and that's how we ended in South Africa. So just to remind ourselves, we went with 4 questions to South Africa. We got some answers. We are now here 6 months. We want to present those answers where we can and set new questions. So I told the MTN people that we need to have a conclave after this session and say, what did we set out to do as business people, as companies? What did we achieve in Feb? What have we done now? Where do we want to head? So we had 4 objectives very quickly. 1, the banana people we went with, the fish people, the fruits and veg, the tourism people, the beef people, because we went with 25 companies. Would we find buyers and distributors of these products? And there was a lot of interest in avocado, in macadamia, in coffee. I was excited about that because if we're able to increase a bit of sales to each other, we balance out this very lopsided trade that we have between our two countries. So that was question number one. Question number two, we said, would we be able to lower the logistics charge for exports to South Africa from Uganda and vice versa? Because we know there's some 4,900 kilometers between Kampala and Johannesburg, and it's not very cheap to ship to South Africa and vice versa. And so we ensured that we work around lessening the cost per kilo of shipping fruits, vegetables, vanilla, and other things to South Africa. As I will be telling you, Uganda Airlines has an arrangement for that. If they're here, they will share with you when time comes. Question number three, we went to South Africa in February with was, would we attract capital, skill, and partnerships to process more food, to deal with more storage capacity for the country, to deal with refrigeration, because the cost of these things, a cost per square meter of a warehouse is in the north of $9, $10. There's more space to have refrigeration, more space to deal with transportation. So we wanted to have a conversation around those things as business to business and see what government is able to do. And then we said number four, would we be able to improve the business environment to ensure that we allow more investment? President Ramaphosa posed a question to us. How is it that we've dropped from 70 companies to 33? And so we went back, we were asking ourselves, is it taxation? Is it immigration or migration? Is it companies that have taken loans and they are not paying? Or is it that some capabilities and capacity has grown in Uganda and we need to find another way to structure the relationship we have between our two countries? These were the four, as a reminder, four questions we went asking. This is what we found. One, interest in distribution of food and food products, cut flowers, tea, coffee, animal fats, essential oils. I could go on and on. This interest was very strong. There was even a company, I think its leader might be here. Is Blendtons here? Did they come? Is Buteres here? I'm using these companies as an example. So there was one company, apart from the Uganda Andrew Muchibi you had, in Durban that said, give me clarity of amounts of these products available so that I don't have stockouts when I take your products. Tell me the capacity you have to handle fresh fruits at Entebbe with your 1,000 square meters of installed capacity. So we picked a lot of interest in this area. There was a retailer who I even encouraged, come. We met with Uganda Railways Corporation and tried to give them warehousing at the railway goods shed. We tried to speak to Tanzania Ports Authority to ensure that they can store their products. And so for me, we kept following these things when we found that level of interest. But there's been some weaknesses in executing that interest, so we really think that this session, this summit now allows us to reflect and say, how do we do better? The second finding we got was that this cost of logistics has to go down, so we worked with Uganda Airlines to take a kilo of fresh fruits and vegetables from $2.7 to $1. We asked for dedicated space at Entebbe for products going to South Africa. We ensured that the president made strategic announcements on game parks for our tourists coming from South Africa, aerodromes to make sure that they are improved, and these decisions we follow through based on that summit we had in Feb, that we would have more charters. We have a target of some 600 people per week. If we could get half of those from South Africa, our hoteliers, our eggs, our chickens, and us who go to South Africa would consume these products. We found that there was interest in Uganda Air Cargo for flights of products to Congo, to DRC, to Mogadishu, to Juba, and we're working around that area to see if there's a strategic partnership by the time we end this summit. That was number 2 finding. Number 3, capital and assembly. So we spoke to MTN, and I hope that we follow through with this, that would find an OEM to assemble smartphones, because 30% of our cell phone footprint is smartphones. The rest are our usual phones we call KBDT. So MTN agreed that by May, and now it's September, would find someone to do assembly and assembly in country. You also had the Monsis who agreed to assemble transformers. We dealt with 5G capacity to ensure that issues to do with Ugandan doctors, Dr. Echun is here, that they would be able, 44 surgeons we have in South Africa, they would be able to do operations online with Mlago. So Dr. Echun, this is handled. That they would handle mineral beneficiation and waste treatment. And, we'll deal with those things. This is what we picked and we've been working on. And then number 4, that would improve the business environment. Now, this business environment is a huge elephant in the room, but for me as an African, I speak to Africans as brothers, brutally honest, because if we don't speak to each other clearly, we don't grow. What you don't confront, you don't deal with. So we thought, how do you deal with this business environment? Let's appoint a trade representative. And we appointed one in South Africa, Arif Monsi. Arif, are you here? Okay. So Ambassador Paul, you need to bring Monsi here and he tells us what he's doing, how he is doing it, how he's coordinating with you, how he's coordinating with the Ugandan diaspora in South Africa. But we were trying to be deliberate about where do you go if there are problems of Ugandans there, and we'll appoint more with time. So we wanted South Africa to appoint a trade rep here, who business to business, we can have conversations and deal with conflict resolutions quicker. Because part of what I do is to remove those roadblocks wherever they are, and in a very brutal way, we deal with them because we want to grow. Our young people cannot wait for the lateness of decision-making in our continent. That's why they leave us and go to Europe. And I feel like we don't have time. A day should be 27 hours. Now, we have also tried, we have beginning training in export preparedness for each market. We finished the US. Next month, we start with South Africa. Don't go into that market without preparation as a company. We are going to conduct research on tests, on preferences, on capital, on skills, and what more. We're beginning a trade fund, $350 million that we will be kicking off soon to make sure that we can underwrite invoices of businesses that have found market, but they are not able to balance. When you buy from the farmer, he wants instant payment, but the market pays you after 2-3 months. What do you do? So we're fixing this because we had commitments made in Feb. And we know that our businesses require hand-holding, so you need to deal with this question of capital for exports. Yesterday, I sat in a meeting. I'm hoping government will speak about this tomorrow. I had good conversations on immigration. I had good conversations with URA. I had some things which tell me that we are making a move in those areas, and we need to hold each other accountable so we can help businesses to grow. Now, where do we want to go before I can resume my seat? We went with 4 questions. We picked 4 areas of interest and we're working on them. Some of them we fixed them. Where do we want to go? So when I was a young boy at university, I studied economics. There was a principle we used to call time compression diseconomies. It means that the extent to which a course of action becomes costlier or less efficient when you push it. That every resource you like, if you exert pressure on it, it becomes useless. And reputations and relationships are like that. So for me, I feel that we have begun a conversation in these 2 summits. And we need to be honest with each other when it comes to immigration. Wherever there is an issue, let's deal with it. When it comes to taxes, let's deal with it. When it comes to repatriation of capital, let's deal with it. And we deal with it not in a rushed manner, but deal with it consistently, because the next generation will not take slowdowns and the delays of decisions that stand in the way of jobs. So, 4 things where I think we should head. First, corporate influence. MTN or Stanbic or institutions that have done fantastic work in Uganda, I want to ask you, market leadership means market responsibility. There's a reason you have an ecosystem that has made you successful, but there is a missing link called dealing with agriculture and poverty and exports, and I want more engagement there to understand our societies very well and ensure that they will speak for 10 hours on phone, but they will not go to the garden to dig, or they will not adhere to a standard. So I want you to be in the same mind with me on ensuring that we know each other culturally, we know each other at an elemental level, and we use our corporate influence to create more customers for the future. Number 2, that we work hard to balance this trade. This trade is $200 million, 80% is one way. And some people will not tell you, but it bothers some of us, because the relationship should be a little bit balanced. So industrial materials, imports we bring here, we too want to do some processing. So I just want to give you an example. We grow 8 million bags, 60 kg coffee. But we import 99% of what we drink. And it's Nescafe, 80% of that. And speaking to you as brothers, you know where Nescafe and these, so there are 10 companies in Europe that in between them control $55 billion annually in processing. And some of us who have gone inside and asked questions, they tell us, you're not ready, your labs are not certified. I say, but we can deal with this. What is lab and certification? When the attitude is right, we can do it. Now, so the strategy for us where we want partnership is that we produce 1,500 metric tons of roast and ground coffee to drink, all of us in Uganda, out of those 8 million bags. Very small. So my strategy is that if you find me a strategic partner to ensure that I can push this to 10,000 metric tons, just from 1,000 to 10,000, that's around 50,000, 45,000 metric tons of green. If I can convert it, then we would speak about taxes on packaging material. Would be very deliberate on what we're trying to do. Would speak about taxes on plungers, the ones we use in offices to ensure that we can drink coffee domestically. We can speak about things that will grow that sector in a much more intentional way. That's partly what we're asking in terms of balancing that trade, but also using corporate influence. What I said of coffee could be timber, could be design apparel, could be leather, could be all these things that we handle, could be joint assembly for tractors for the land I mentioned in Gulu, could be fertilizers. These are things we think our companies can partner and work with you. The third one is the question of quality marks for South African products and Ugandan products, conformity assessments. So when we take products South Africa, sometimes we find Western Cape has a Q mark, and Mpumalanga has a Q mark, and another state has a Q mark. And often it's very difficult for us to integrate these. Yet, Uganda is doing fantastic progress on food safety. We're appointing a food safety ombudsman. We're working on plant, animal, feeds, and food safety standards. The National Bureau of Standards has worked with Africa Common Market, and they've done training and joint conversation on how you deal with these issues. If we deal with this, we would be able to improve trade and make sure that we can speak the same language. And then finally, I ask that we be intentional on removing all barriers to in between, and this is just both Uganda and South Africa. So this morning I read the story, I don't know, those of you who like reading, a story about the Luddites. The Luddites are 19th century. There was a movement in Britain to knock down with hammers factories that were doing assembly or doing spinning, because spinning factories were taking away jobs from skilled handmaids. And so they would shoot owners of factories to say, we are going to bring a law that taxes a shirt made by a machine. Many of you know that we cannot fight technology. We cannot fight change of young people wanting borders opened and ensuring that they can trade with each other. So my request really is that moving forward, we need to be very deliberate on ensuring that our markets are open, our institutions cooperate, and the main thing is that we facilitate the private sector because it's the one that switches on the lights and grows our economies. So as I resume my seat, across there in that tent, which is meet and greet, we put some young people because we don't want this session, this summit to end without some signing of off-takes. So if you have ability or you know someone who is able to buy among these 13 products that were displayed there or a service, we want to take your number, your name, your details, and follow through so that we are able to get something out of this interaction. If you have a company and you want to buy equity in a Ugandan company in those sectors, we want to have a genuine conversation about that. If you're looking for a catalog of companies that have been trained, they may be weak in terms of capital, but they have the right attitude. There are some young people there that I would like that we speak to. I am hoping UIA, you will help us speak about the question of PPP. The Honourable Minister mentioned some things, our PPP law, the question of carryovers of people who don't contribute as shareholders, and conflict resolution when there is trouble, and equity. This is very important. The Honourable Minister has pointed us into some of the things that are not said but affect a relationship. I want to thank again MTN. Is Charles Mbire still here? So I wanted to thank Charles because people are forgotten whenever there is growth. There was a person who began the relationship with MTN in 1997. And I wanted us to clap for him because the older we get, the more we are forgotten. MTN pays a lot of tax, employs people, but someone had the audacity to say you can do cell phones in Uganda. I thank you and God bless you.
I'd like to hear from you. Please email us at info@tapmedia.com and visit our website at www.tapmedia.com. You can also visit our offices located at Tomosi Business Park, Luzira, Port Bell Road, or call 0414 220 702. Thank you.